Susan, what do you think you're doing? Returning home from shopping, I was stunned to see a moving truck parked in front of our house. My in-laws stood there, eyes locked on me with expressions of feigned innocence. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law barked orders at the movers as if she owned the place. You have no right to enter our home without permission, I snapped. Watch your tone, young lady, my father-in-law shot back, reaching for my purse. Now, be a good daughter-in-law and open the door. I instinctively pulled away, clutching my bag. My mother-in-law smirked as if enjoying the spectacle. Get out of here, you're trespassing, I demanded. Her response left me speechless. Strangers shouldn't speak so rudely. At that moment, Tom stepped onto the porch, his face pale as he took in the scene. Mom, do you even hear yourself? His voice shook with disbelief. What the hell is going on? I knew the time had come to stand my ground. Taking a deep breath, I met my mother-in-law's furious gaze and began. My name is Christy Grob. At 48, I run a thriving insurance agency, a business I inherited from my father. Organization is my passion, and I take pride in helping people secure their futures. The company flourished thanks to my father's legacy and the long-standing relationships he built. I met Tom when I was 30, introduced at a work event by a mutual friend. He was 2 years older and fresh out of a bad relationship with a woman who had cheated on him. We hit it off immediately and started dating soon after. At the time, my mother was in poor health, and I longed to fulfill her wish of seeing me marry. Perhaps I rushed things, but Tom, though hesitant at first, respected my feelings. Just 6 months later, he proposed. Through tears, I said yes, please take care of me. We had a small, intimate wedding with just our families. My mother, radiant with joy, passed away the following month, but I was grateful she got to see me in my dress. Tom had been my rock during that time, and I vowed to cherish him forever. 5 years into our marriage, we remained childless, not by choice, but by fate. We believed children were a blessing, not something to be forced. My in-laws, however, had other ideas. It started during a New Year's visit. Tom had hesitated to go, but his mother personally invited us. As soon as we arrived, the interrogation began. No baby yet? When will you give us a grandchild? Mom, we've told you before, Tom said sharply. We'll let nature decide. If you keep pushing this, we're leaving. I understand, but maybe the field is barren, she muttered under her breath. That's enough, Tom snapped, taking my hand. Christy, let's go. As we turned to leave, she made one final remark about our duty to provide heirs. We left without exchanging the traditional greetings. Tom apologized profusely, but I assured him it wasn't his fault. That night in the car, he made a quiet but firm decision. If they can't respect us, we don't owe them anything. Over time, he distanced us from his parents. We moved, and Tom ignored their calls and attempts to reconnect. For the next 13 years, we only saw them at weddings or funerals. Eventually, they stopped mentioning grandchildren, a small relief. Then, out of nowhere, they showed up at our doorstep. That day, Tom was out with a friend, leaving me alone. When I opened the door, Mike and Susan barged in, talking loudly as if they owned the place. Without hesitation, they began rifling through our belongings. Still sharing a bed at your age? How scandalous, Susan snickered, holding up a pair of my undergarments. Tom must be very excited, huh? I felt my stomach turn. They wandered through the house, making snide comments at every turn. Then, Susan thrust a crumpled newspaper into my hands. Look, a woman gave birth at 60, there's still hope for you yet, she beamed. A chill ran down my spine. We've been too patient. Maybe it's time you moved in with us so we can take matters into our own hands. Before I could respond, the front door swung open. I'm home, Tom called, then he stopped short, taking in the scene. His expression darkened. Mom, Dad, what the hell are you doing here? Susan shrugged. You never told us your address, so we hired a detective. It wasn't cheap, you know. You'll cover the cost, right? Tom's eyes blazed. No, and you're leaving, now. He strode over, grabbed Susan by the arm, and escorted her to the door. Tom, that hurts. How can you treat your mother like this? She wailed. Mike stammered, but Tom wasn't listening. Get out. If you ever show up uninvited again, I will cut ties for good. Susan gasped. Oh dear, has Christy brainwashed you? This has nothing to do with Christy, he snapped. You did this to yourselves. Now leave. Still protesting, they finally stormed out. Tom turned to me and my father, his expression heavy with guilt. I'm so sorry, I can't believe they went this far. My father simply smiled. Tom, you're a good man, don't apologize for them, come on, let's eat. Tom blinked, then nodded, thank you, his voice wavered with emotion. That night, we sat together, sharing a warm meal. We decided we wouldn't let them force us out of our home. If they returned, we would involve the police. Days passed, then weeks. And for the first time in years, we started to believe maybe they were truly gone. After my father passed away, Tom and I tried to settle back into our peaceful life. A month later, we decided to take a short trip to gather some of his belongings, little mementos to remember him by. But the peace didn't last. As we pulled into our driveway, my heart stopped. A moving truck was parked outside. My in-laws stood nearby, overseeing movers hauling furniture out of our home. Susan, what do you think you're doing? I shouted, my voice echoing across the yard. Susan turned at the sound of my voice, momentarily surprised, then scoffed and resumed barking orders at the movers. Don't just stand there, take that inside immediately, she snapped before turning her gaze back to me. You have no right to enter our home without permission, I protested, rushing forward. Don't talk back to me, young lady, just open the door, Mike growled, stepping toward me and reaching for my bag. Panicked, I clutched it tightly, stepping back. Susan's lips curled into a sinister smile. Outsiders should leave immediately, she said smugly. I was too stunned to respond, but Tom, who had been unloading the car, heard everything. His face turned red with fury. Mom, do you even hear yourself? His voice trembled with anger. What the hell is all this? Susan crossed her arms. What does it look like? We're moving in. I clenched my fists, my patience snapping. This is my house, and you know exactly what you're doing. You made Tom buy this place, didn't you? Now, you're trying to claim it for yourselves. How shameless can you be? Susan's expression darkened as she turned to Tom. Tom, is Christy blackmailing you? She gasped dramatically. Poor thing, you don't have to cover for her. And besides, Christy is just a housewife, isn't she? Tom's jaw tightened. What do you mean, just a housewife? Christy runs an insurance agency. She built this life on her own. You have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, please, Susan waved a dismissive hand. She's always at home, when she's not off at spas or dining in fancy restaurants with strange men. My stomach turned. The strange man she referred to was a client, a longtime acquaintance of my late father. We had met for a business lunch at a hotel, a meeting Tom had originally planned to attend but missed due to work. But Susan's words weren't about facts, they were meant to sow doubt. That man is a client. I was supposed to be there too, Tom shot back, but I had to work. You're grasping at straws. Susan's lips thinned, but she wasn't done. Tom, don't be fooled, it's not too late. You can still marry a younger woman and give us grandchildren. The moment the words left her mouth, Tom exhaled sharply. He had reached his limit. Mom, I can't have children, with Christy or anyone else. The color drained from Susan and Mike's faces. What are you talking about? Mike asked, voice uneven. I stood frozen, trying to process Tom's words. We had never undergone fertility tests. He had always said it didn't matter. A few years ago, I had a high fever, Tom admitted. The doctor suggested some tests. I went alone. Turns out, I was born infertile. A lump formed in my throat. I had my own infertility fears, but had never voiced them, terrified of losing Tom if I wasn't able to give him children. I reached for his hand. That doesn't change anything. He gave a small, bittersweet smile. I know, but I still worried you'd see me differently. I pulled him into a tight hug. But his parents had no such warmth. What do you mean you can't have kids? Susan shrieked. So we got a defective product? Have you been deceiving us this whole time? Tom's expression hardened. Calling your own son a defective product? He said coldly. Parents shouldn't speak that way. What's wrong with calling something broken when it is? Susan raged. She grabbed Tom by the shirt, pulling him forward in anger. And then Tom spoke a name. A single name. Susan's face went ghostly white. She stumbled back as if he had slapped her. Mike frowned. Who's that? I don't know any. Tom's lips curled slightly. That's the name of my biological father. Silence. What are you talking about? Mike roared. I'm your father. Tom shook his head. No, you're not. Remember when you hired a detective to track me down? Well, I hired one too, and I found a lot more than I expected. He pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward Mike. Susan swayed on her feet. Mike's face contorted in rage as he stared at the proof. His hands trembled. You were cheating on me? So this man is Tom's real father? You've been having an affair for 50 years? That's not what happened, Susan shrieked. Not what happened. I saw you with him. Susan tried to back away, but Mike advanced, shaking with fury. How long? How long were you lying to me? Tom and I ignored them as they devolved into screaming accusations. Instead, we turned to the moving company and had them redirect our belongings to a nearby storage unit. We weren't paying for this mess. Susan and Mike could deal with the extra fees. So I spent my life raising another man's child? Mike spat, voice venomous. All that money, wasted. Susan scoffed. You should be grateful I even let you marry me. You had no money, no status. You'd be nothing without me. Before Mike could respond, Tom took my hand, leading me toward the house. He had nothing more to say. As we stepped inside, he sighed. Are you okay? Yeah, I murmured, squeezing his hand. Are you? He gave me a tired but genuine smile. Never better. Let's go eat. And just like that, we closed the door on the past. This time, for good. He's a man with both wealth and power. Staying married to you was just a convenience, a way to enjoy life with him. I even let you raise his child, didn't I? You should be grateful. Susan's voice was laced with mockery, her smirk taunting. Mike's expression contorted with fury. Are you serious? I only married you because you said you were pregnant. Even after your father attacked me. Susan scoffed. So what? If he beat you up, you must have deserved it. The sheer audacity of her words left Mike momentarily speechless. But before he could respond, Susan's phone blared, slicing through the tension. Her demeanor shifted in an instant. Checking the caller ID, her face lit up, and she answered in a voice dripping with affection. Hello, darling. What's up? Miss me? A chill ran down my spine at the sickly sweet tone. Tom, standing beside me, wore a twisted smile, his eyes filled with a knowing amusement. Then, suddenly, wait, you're not darling? Ma'am, what? Oh no, this must be a mistake. Or rather, all of this alone, $10 million? Please, just hold on a moment. Panic crept into Susan's voice. Her expression shifted from confidence to desperation as the call abruptly ended. She stood there, dazed. Tom let out a soft chuckle. I'm guessing all the evidence, photos, recordings, just reached them. Susan snapped her gaze to him, eyes blazing. This is your fault. It's called sharing information, Tom said calmly. Oh, and by the way, she's not divorcing your darling. He's just another son-in-law in their family. Looks like some tough times ahead for you. And judging by what I've heard, your precious lover's been keeping a few mistresses. His wife even allowed him to cheat, as long as it was with younger women. Susan staggered back. Mistresses? But he told me he loved only me. She collapsed onto the ground, her face pale as she processed the betrayal. Mike, who had been fuming, suddenly let out a satisfied smirk. He turned to Tom, his tone shifting to something almost paternal. Must have been tough with a mother like that. I'll let bygones be bygones this time. How about this, let's start fresh. Just us three. Cut ties with your mother, and we'll live together. You, me, and Christy. I felt my stomach turn. Christy, I'll take care of you. Tom stiffened. Stay away from Christy. But Mike ignored the warning and reached toward me. Big mistake. In one swift motion, I grabbed his wrist, twisted his arm, and flipped him onto the ground. What the? Mike groaned, stunned. He had clearly not expected that. I stared down at him coldly. In truth, I had been practicing self-defense since I was young. My father insisted on it, given my line of work. Over time, I grew to enjoy the training and continued even after taking over the business. Tom, watching his father sprawled out on the ground, let out a satisfied chuckle. Mike seemed too shocked to speak, but Susan, ever the opportunist, latched onto a new idea. Christy, that was quite impressive, she gushed, dusting herself off. You're capable of handling anything. So, how about this? Why don't you pay the alimony for me? If we live together, we can cut down on expenses, and I can help around the house. We could even adopt kids. I take such good care of children, you know. I stared at her in disbelief. Are you serious? Of course. It's a win-win. I exhaled sharply, my patience snapping. There is no way I'm letting someone like you into my home. That house holds memories of Tom, my father, and me. And why should I pay your alimony? You should take responsibility for your own mess. Susan flinched, clearly unused to being spoken to so directly. But her initial shock quickly turned to fury. How dare you talk to your husband's mother like that, she screeched. I've already told everyone we're moving in. And besides, that house is about to be demolished. I have nowhere else to go, so you have to let me stay. What are you saying? He's my son. He should be with me. Mike, recovering from his fall, joined the shouting. But Tom had heard enough. His voice cut through the noise, firm and final. Neither of you will be moving in with us. We're cutting ties completely. And if you cause any more trouble, we will call the police. The threat of the police sent them into a panic. Susan and Mike exchanged glances before backing away. Their bickering continued as they stumbled toward the train station, their voices fading into the distance. Life moves on. In the end, Mike and Susan divorced, but financial desperation soon forced them back together. Mike, bitter and resentful, tried to claim alimony from Susan and her lover, only to face a brutal counterclaim from the lover's wife. Susan, never accustomed to hard work, struggled to hold down a job. She quit at the slightest inconvenience. Meanwhile, the lover, once a powerful figure, lost his chance at the presidency and became a recluse, trapped in a legal battle with his wife. And Tom? He recovered quickly. Despite being approached by his lover's family to claim an inheritance, Tom declined without hesitation. He wanted no part in their mess. That was just the kind of person he was, never greedy, never seeking power. I felt nothing but pride. As for me, life took an unexpected yet welcome turn. A business associate had recently found a stray cat and offered her to me. Excited, I had already picked out a name, Marine. Her blue eyes reminded me of the sea, a fitting tribute to the fishing trips Tom and my father used to enjoy. Tom shared my excitement. A new family member, huh, he mused, smiling. And as the doorbell rang, signaling Marine's arrival, I greeted my associate with a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. Welcome.